Welcome to the Public Sector Innovation Podcast, sponsored by Rackspace Government Solutions and AWS. I'm your host, John Meyer, and control shift mentality and change beyond the buy-in. Here to discuss these challenges and solutions is Jason Wicker, Rackspace CTO of Public Sector, and Jeff Martinez, VP, State, Local Government, and Education at Rackspace. Jeff, help me understand the control shift mentality. What are you talking about?
Well, control shift for us is really hitting control shift on the current mentality and approach for organizations, institutions inside the public sector, and how they approach and think about, what's next, right? So, leadership, IT managers, even good engineers are thinking about what's next all the time. And so for us, we just want to kind of hit that control shift on how they usually think about things in our experience in talking and working with customers from around public sector, and really kind of making sure that we're zooming out appropriately to understand exactly what's going on and how we can help.
When you say the control shift, right? So I'm thinking here I'm on my keyboard, I'm hitting control shift, right? And I'm doing a different functionality. I'm enhancing what I'm doing, I'm changing what I'm doing, and I want to do something different. I want to explore more about that.
Look, like you said on your keyboard, it's the same button. It does something different. It's the same IT organization. It's the same business units. It's the same finance teams. It's the same legal teams. It's the same infrastructure teams that have been doing good work and good missions for whatever that organization may be. So we're not talking about getting rid of that or moving away from that. What we're saying is, hey, let's elevate that, right? The control shift analogy of giving a different function from the same people, right? And generally those functions on the keyboard are enhanced functions, right? And by what we mean by that is saying, hey, if we actually, advise and think about how we can bring together based off the experiences that we've had and other customers have had with us, if we can take that mentality of, yeah, it's not just IT providing a service for a business unit or a business unit going to IT and saying, hey, we did this, now you have to support us. It's the synergy, if you will, right, between those orgs that have a regular pattern of how they work together to drive these missions through technology, right? And it's that control shift. It's like, hey, beforehand, we did it this way, right? I did my thing, you did your thing, we went back and forth, boom, 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 boom. Now, what we've looked at and when we've talked to customers and some of the advisory processes that we provide, help customers understand how do I bring all of those people to the table up front, right? So that I understand what the business unit is asking for, and they're not just lobbing a tennis ball over the fence to me in IT, right? Or as I'm, as a technologist and I'm bringing in new technology to say Jeff's sales team, right, and his organization, I'm not going to be like, hey, by the way, I bought this thing. You guys need to go use it because I spent a lot of money on it. What I want is, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Jeff, is that going to help you? Is that going to help your team? Because I want to have those stakeholders at the table. And of course, because costs are always an issue, right? I got to make sure finance is in with me as well and say, hey, look, I'm looking at spending this money. The business has bought in, legal and security agree. Here's where we estimate the ROI to be. Here's where we estimate the investment to be. Again, so we don't just show up on a line item on somebody's spreadsheet that gets questioned.
Jason, what you're saying is, and I'm going to use the analogy, right? Control shift on your keyboard, because I think every one of us uses it, right? We use it as a shortcut, but we just do it. And what you're saying is understand the why behind why we're doing it, why we're being asked to do it, and not just do it.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Let me give you an example. Higher education, right? Any institution at higher education has multiple schools, departments, internal administrative offices and whatnot going on, right? With all good intent, a school, let's say the School of Business, buys a tool because they need something, they're lacking something, they want something, and they purchase that. They have the funding, they have the right to do that. Now they purchase that tool, but then they realize, oh, wow, somebody's got to maintain it. Somebody's got to sustain it. Somebody needs to train us on it. And who should absolutely, when it comes down to licensing and everything else, who should own it? Well, I'll go talk to the IT department, right? And so then the IT department then has to analyze whether or not does that tool already exist in the overall institution? Are we duplicating efforts, and do we have something that has the same feature parity? And then that organization has to realize, okay, it does align with our overall strategy of how we want to do business with this within this institution, or it doesn't. And so this approach mitigates that. And it really allows the CIO or the school to really be armed with good information so they understand their why. They understand how and the discussions that will dispel the myths around things. And then really kind of walking through the process of arming them appropriately to build a well-architected environment or to make sure that the tool is the right tool, not just for the school, but for the overall strategy within the organization.
Jeff, I'm going to say something that everybody hates usually is, but haven't we always done it that way? Haven't we always purchased that? Somebody up, higher up purchase it, a business unit purchase something and we need this and we give it to you. And guess what? IT or maintenance, everybody needs to support it, build infrastructure around it. And it's just, that's the way it's been.
Typically, what we find is it is documented that a internal department, office, or school is supposed to do that and follow that process that's probably well documented. Most organizations have that documentation. But again, with good intent, folks get super excited about shiny objects and they want the value that they're looking for, or they want to solve the problem that they have, the here and now. And this tool, this automation is going to do that. And so they jump in. And so now they're on the hook for a year contract or licensing agreement or whatever that is. So now it's got to be something to solve. It's got to be something to maintain. It's got to be something to sustain properly and secure properly. And so it's still something that the IT department has to manage and assess.
And I think to your point, yes, we have done that today, right? It's process, it's paperwork, it's checkboxes. Yes, we followed the process. We got approved to buy the money, to spend the money to go do this. With the way technology is changing, right? With whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's data sharing, whether it's cybersecurity, and really it's all of those things, right? As that stuff advances, everything becomes more intertwined. And so to dig deeper on the business school example, say I've got a business school that wants to build an AI agent to train their folks on how to do sales calls, right? Might be a real use case. It's out there. Well, the program that the people they went and bought this from said, okay, cool, we need student profiles. Oh yeah, no problem, we need student profiles. But then it comes to implementation and the business school goes, oh, well, hey, we need all the student data. And security steps in and goes, no, what's going on here, right? We've seen these projects where you've got security, you've got legal, you've got privacy and compliance, depending on where, research institutions or research agencies that have to answer to a higher power, right? Not the school, not the department, but maybe the Fed or the state itself. They have requirements that the business doesn't even know about, right? They don't think about those things because they're just trying to solve a business problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so by bringing these people together up front, right? And we have a process and advisory services where we'll come in and help. Here's what a KPI looks like for the checkboxes, but here's the workflow process. Do you have all your stakeholders? Do you not know what you don't know? We take people who have traditionally been the know, right? And bring them along for the journey from day one, right? It's a sign of respect. It's a sign of partnership. And it helps these things progress so much faster and so much smoother. We're working on quite a large project with one of our customers. We were 4 months into this project and security popped their head up and said, well, hold on, what's going on? And they're like, well, you signed the form. Literally, this is what happened, right? Well, you guys signed off on the form. Well, I didn't understand the breadth of what was going on. I didn't understand how far-reaching this is across our network. Yeah, we signed the form because you asked us to sign the form because we signed the forms. That's what we do. But you never asked us to help you. You never asked us to come join the conversation. So now we're here in the conversation and the project stopped. Now I got to start back over again, right? And so, lost money, lost time, lost resources. By bringing everybody together, you get ahead of it. And it's again, I go back to respect, right? It is respecting your peers and your partners across your organization so that collectively you can drive for business outcomes and missions.
Yeah. So for me, zooming out a little bit, you asked the question, how do we approach this? Um, I think it's critical for us to be genuine in your approach as a partner vendor, right? There's a lot of vendors out there. There are some that are designated as a partner vendor, right? And that's our goal. And so when we go in and we have a conversation with the CIO and we sit down and introduce ourselves properly, and we really talk about less about a sales pitch and the shiny object and more about understanding in a two-way conversation around the technology that they're utilizing, where they're thinking about shifting, how are they planning on getting there, and then really kind of aligning on certain things that allows us to really understand the critical mission that they're responsible for, the amount of staff that they have and where they really thrive in their skill set. Maybe some areas where I won't call them gaps, but really areas where they could benefit from some partnership. And then, what's the timeline? What are we talking about here? When are you trying to accomplish this goal, this new thing? And I think those conversations start to really generate and produce a trust relationship then where we start to really get good information so that we can eventually do with and not just do for. And I think that's key for us. Um, Otherwise, you show up and you say, "Hey, look, I've got all the things. You should buy one of these things. Which watch would you like to have?" Right? And it's really for us. It's not like that. It's about genuinely investing in the community, genuinely investing to understand the critical mission, and then genuinely working together to exceed their expectations for the business outcomes, the technology advancements that they're looking for. And so that's kind of our approach.
Jeff, what you're saying is having that conversation early on before they purchase this shiny object, when they're thinking about utilizing the shiny and thinking about all the dependencies of this shiny object. And let's just use a new software tool, right?
Mhm.
Actually, I got a great example, cloud. We're going to cloud. Okay. CTO says we got to go to cloud, right? And one of the things Jason was touching on is bringing everybody together. If you have everybody's buy-in, a conversation, whether they're a decision maker or not, they make a decision with the process. They feel more adapt to it. They feel more ownership of this process, and they're more engaged in doing this. And having that conversation early on is valuable because the long-term goal of it is they have a decision. They understand it. They're not going to slow the process down.
Right. Right. 100%. So information is power. And if you can have that conversation, get the input from different categories of the business to include the customer, the end customer, um, you then have an opportunity to really build something that's sustainable, that's scalable. Then you're identifying upfront, opportunities for efficiencies. What does the cost savings look like? How do we measure that? Where are we going to find opportunities for automation? All of this stuff kind of comes together from those good conversations. And to Jason's point earlier, that's part of what Rackspace Technology Advisory Service is all about. And let me zoom out a little bit and give you an analogy, right? So, an organization is think about a redwood tree in the forest, right? The organization's been there for a long time. It's been operating very well. It's been a pillar of support in the state, in the city, in the county, or a higher education institution. They know what they're doing. But when we talk about emerging technologies, you know, the canopy of leaves and branches is all the things that's already there, right? And it's the area where vendors a lot of times want to put the shiny things. Here's this shiny thing or this AI thing or whatever that is. What we do is we go back down into the root system, the foundational things like strategy, governance, framework models, and we talk about those things with the CIO and their staff. And we have good conversations and dialogue about what is your ethics statement around emerging technologies or AI specifically? What are you guys doing for data governance? Have you thought through that? Do you have a clear strategy around that? Let's talk through that. Because when you start to have those type of conversations and you start to build that sort of foundation, then you're building something special where now you can build and you can grow that redwood tree appropriately. In the end, all the leaves and all the shiny things and products are important, right, to businesses and vendors and whatnot. But quite honestly, it should be a spectrum of vendor partners, both the organization, AWS, Rackspace Technology, and getting them the right solution, not the right product. So more solutions over products is really our goal.
And to double down on the tree analogy, right? By feeding the roots, you can enable the growth at the top. And our area of expertise here is being that translator, if you will, right? IT guys love our buzzwords, right? Love our 3-letter acronyms, right? The finance guys don't. They got their whole own list of 3-letter acronyms, their whole, EBITDA and all the other fun stuff that they deal with on the financial side. So one of the things that advisory does is help build that lexicon of translation, right? So, hey, when we say ROI, this is what we mean. Okay, well, when I think ROI, this is what I need to hear. Oh, okay, well, let me change how I talk about ROI when I'm talking to you, finance person, right? Well, security guy, I want these things. Well, sure, yeah, you want to be compliant. No, I need to see them like this. So as people start to be prepared to speak the same language, to be able to translate my needs to your needs, right? Because ultimately, I've been in hundreds of meetings where people just talk like this, right?
And we all shake our heads
We
like
all
we
think, "Oh, yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
but we don't have that, what I'll call a common lexicon
Yes.
between all of us to understand between security, finance, operations, and IT.
And sometimes it's a KPI chart. Sometimes it's a form, right? Sometimes it is a, hey, we need to know these 6 things and the rest of it we don't care about, right? And then the CIO, and where we help support the actual central IT, if you will, whether that's at the school sometimes, whether it's at the campus, or whether it's at the system or agency, or is, let's talk about repeatable patterns. Hey, everybody needs EC2 for AWS example. Okay, well, you know what? If you're going to deploy EC2, it's going to look like one of these 4 things, right? So now I've been able to say everybody has a comfort that they know they can go get EC2 services from my service provider internally. Security's already signed off on these configurations. It's all done through an automated process. Heck, you do it right, it's a service catalog item, right? And even then, the technologists and the non-technologists in the business units start to feel more comfortable about, hey, I can go to IT and IT can help support me because we speak the same language. When they tell me, hey, it needs to run on our compliant EC2 instances, I know what that means, right? And I can then, when my vendor says, hey, we need EC2, I can go, oh, hey, let me get you with IT because they need to give you the images that we use. That's how you build value and repeatable process. So just one of those things that I think as we build this out and have done this with other folks, we learn every time we talk to a customer. We learn every time we talk to a prospect. And we try and feed that process back in almost. I'm gonna go triple down in the mulching, right, of these ideas that we use to fertilize this tree.
So let me be clear. There are some organizations out there in the public sector that are killing it and doing it right? And we learn from them just as much as they learn sometimes from us. But it is a two-way street. And it's an opportunity for us to grow as a company, to grow as a partner, and for us to enable critical missions around the U.S. and in Canada that allows us to be part of something pretty special. I'll tell you the thing that I love when we have good conversations with CIOs and their staff is that most people will say, oh yeah, well, you're starting with the CIO, you have a top-down approach. Actually, we make it very clear that we have to have both a top-down and a bottom-up alignment, conversations at both ends to meet in the middle to make sure that we're covering down on all the things that are critical to that organization, to their staff and their customers. And I think to me, it's a special time when we get an opportunity to do that with our customers.
Jeff, I imagine the difference between the commercial and public sector. In public sector, there's a lot more regulations and compliances and controls in place. And there's specific products and services you can and can't use, which might make it difficult for some companies to say, hey, listen, we have to use this, but the people down below are like, oh, we're not using that. We don't like that product or service, but you have limited options. I really have to ask this, how do you get that buy-in? How do you approach that for a company that everybody is like, listen, this is what we're going to utilize, but here's the benefits from it. Here's how it's going to work for you. Here's the skills, the training. Here's how you're going to maintain it.
Yeah.
And that they all feel like, all right, we've got you. The company is now backed by everybody.
Yeah. So what you're really talking about is not our recipe for making sure we check all the blocks. It's really the organization's recipe in standards and security protocols and all the things and policies that are important to them that we need as a partner vendor to make sure that we're covering down on and having good evidence in our use cases or doing POCs to make sure that we're doing it correctly before we throw something in production. Look, the public sector category of business is so unique, different than commercial, as you mentioned. Commercial has the ability to go lean out over the edge of a cliff in technology and do the coolest things up front, first to do it. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. And we need that because we want to expand the parameters of what we're doing in technology and process and all the things that are cool out there. But when you're responsible for a public sector mission, when you're responsible for a higher education institution and enterprise, there's so many things in the security and compliance categories that you have to be careful, that you have to have a guarantee. Now, is there a 100% guarantee on everything? No, but you need to make sure that you're following the right process to ensure the right security and compliance, that you are taking care of data and information that is critical, but also wanted by so many, so many bad actors out there that you just can't take any risks like that. So yes, public sector, sometimes the industry is a little behind in the advancements versus or compared to commercial, but it's for good reason. And the pace of public sector is a little slower to adopt, but once they adopt it, wow, and you can learn some lessons from them and how they're utilizing that.
A large part of my role as CTO for public sector is to be that understanding of what those compliance requirements are, what the regulatory requirements are, so that when we show up as an advisor and say, hey, we understand CMMC, we understand FedRAMP, we understand TAC 202, we understand ISO, we understand NIST, whatever those certifications may be. And by the way, we think you're in this box. Are we correct? Okay, cool. Then that helps automatically make some decisions on where we're going to go. We roll that back into the mulch of making sure that, hey, everything that's built is compliant, right? So the reason we were talking earlier on my example of the 4EC2 images, right? Well, if you do it right and you share that mission and make sure everybody's on the same page, because security is everybody's job, right? AWS loves to say it's job zero, right? Is my business owner is going to go, hey, why do I have to use those 4 images? Oh, because they're compliant. Oh, okay, done. Now it makes it a lot easier for people to understand that they're doing the right thing by supporting the compliance, supporting the internal organization that supports them and keeps them out of trouble, keeps the organization out of trouble, and protects the data. So yes, compliance and regulatory can be difficult, but once you kind of check the box on it and say, hey, this is how we do business, right? I mean, that's when people ask me what I do compliant cloud, right? Because that's what everything we do has got some aspect of compliance to it. And that's what brings that comfort level, right? Because we can also speak to it with the CISO and the CIO and the CTO and the business owners, right? And explain to finance, yeah, this might be a little bit more expensive. Why? Because it's got to meet these these regulatory requirements. Oh, okay, regulations? We understand regulations, no problem, right? Maybe they don't understand NIST, but they understand regulations. So again, building that conversational aptitude within an organization by showing them and teaching them, through do with services, how other people do it. How do we then adapt that story to you? And then how does that, at the end of the day, hit on all these points that you're trying to achieve that you didn't know that the control shift would give you all this cool new functionality?
Unlock some hidden secrets.
Exactly.
Right? With it. Jeff, we've been talking a little bit, and we've mentioned advisory services just a little bit here and there throughout it. I'd love you to dive a little bit more into it. What is this advisory services?
Advisory services is something that Rackspace Government Solutions offers in the way to approach the customer, have a good conversation, and really team with that customer to do with, as Jason mentioned, right? It's about governance, and governance is about frameworks and kind of walking that path. That CIO should never be on the high dive looking down in a pool of migrations or emerging technologies alone. And most times they're not. They have their key staff with them and they're very talented. They've got a lot of expertise, but it takes a village. It takes a village to make sure that we're doing all the right things for that organization and that CIO and their staff to make sure that they're successful. So it depends on where the customer is. Not every customer is in the same spot in their journey. And we recognize that. Again, it's more listening than talking when we first meet them. And so making sure we understand and confirming that they are where we think they are, and we understand their skill set and we understand their business outcomes that they're looking for, then that starts the process of us really identifying opportunities for us to work together to start accelerating that path and doing that correctly for them. And that's really at a high level what advisory services is really about.
Yeah, I mean, it's the framework, right? So it's us bringing the framework of how to do these things, right? Hey, here's 62 KPIs that finance likes to look at on IT projects. Hey, finance, which of these 62 do you like? We like these 17. Great. Hey, IT, we need to make sure that these 17 are running all the time. Here's how you do that, right? Oh, you want to talk about policy as code so that everything's deployed in the cloud, private, public, and it always is going to meet security. Hey, security, these are the policies for the compliance requirements you have. You cool with those? Yes. Okay. Hey, IT, you need to implement and make sure that these are being reported on every time because that's what security is going to be looking for. And then, oh, by the way, business owner, we need to make sure that your vendor is comfortable with this stuff because they may not be aware of what's going on. And just kind of creating that connective tissue of communication, that's what advisory does. We come in, it's an actual engagement. We bring in PMs, program managers, specialists in certain areas, finance, FinOps, IT, automation. And again, to Jeff's point, depends on where they're at. But we then come back with, hey, look, here are 6, 7 areas that we think you, Mr. Customer, as an entity can improve, right? And these 3 need to go first, and then these 2, and you guys could do these last 2 whether or not you want to, it's up to you. But we have pillars, we have, understanding of these different areas so that it is consumable, right? It's not because these type of things can very quickly get out of hand, right? Size and complexity. So one of the things that we've done is build it into consumable chunks so that we know, okay, here's the stakeholders that need to be here for this. Here's the stakeholders that need to be here for this. And then at the end of the day, it's about making the mission more efficient, the entity more efficient, and not putting anything at risk, right? Mitigating risk. That's a huge area because having that buy-in, right, is great. Now we got to execute as a team, not as a bunch of individual players.
This feels like having a well-architected advisory services in where it's bringing all the key stakeholders into the meeting, having that full-on discussion early on, everybody that knows and understands it, and an evaluation of where they're at and how you can help them succeed and bringing the key points forward. I love how you mentioned like the KPIs, right? What are the really important ones that we are capturing? We can capture all the data in the world, but what is important to you?
Yeah.
Whether it's finance, security, what are the things you want to monitor from security? Okay, IT, you don't have to worry about 100 things now. You only have to worry about 25. And that feels more relief. The noise is down and they can focus on that and innovation at the same time. It's really like cleaning up their visibility and helping them understand things much cleaner and clearer to be able to maintain their environments.
When we do those assessments and we have those conversations and we really start to engage, yes, we do present like, here's our findings, but it's really still based on the CIO's priorities, right? Jason might say, we think you should do 1, 2, and 3. And the CIO might say, thank you very much, but we're going to do 2, 3, and 4. We'll get back to 1 based on their critical mission, based on their strategy for their business outcomes. And we support that right now. We will be, and I'm going to use your term, we will be agnostic, but opinionated about a lot of things. But I think that's critical because we want to make sure that we're good partners. And sometimes being good partners is making sure that we identify risk. And so we do that very clearly, but ultimately it's the CIO's, it's the organization's decision. And we are the enabling factor in that, right? Again, they have a staff, we team with that staff, and it's best when they don't even know if it's us or them, it's a together thing. And that's when it really works out well.
Part of the team and everything. Well, Jeff, I got to thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Jason, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Well, everybody, we've been talking about Control Plus Shift, change beyond the buy-in on the Public Sector Innovation Podcast, sponsored by Rackspace Government Solutions and AWS. Joining us today was Jason Wicker, CTO of Rackspace Public Sector, and Jeff Martinez, VP of State and Local Government and Education at Rackspace.